Even though a project usually has a main goal, there are a lot of different tasks that make up all the work. In this lesson, we'll break down the process that breaks down all the work into smaller, more manageable components, the Create WBS process. The work breakdown structure, or the WBS as it's commonly abbreviated, is a hub of information for a project and the groundwork of the project plan. The WBS takes the scope statement, which was defined in the defined scope process, and subdivides it into smaller, workable tasks. The WBS is a graphical illustration of the structured vision of a project. It uses nodes in a chart that is logically organized into a hierarchical structure from the top down. The lowermost nodes in the structure are called work packages, and they are the actual tasks of a particular element of the work that will need to get accomplished in order to finish the overall objective. The WBS isn't only a useful tool to break down and manage the scope of a project, but it's also a useful communication tool that helps explain all the work that is needed in the project to the key stakeholders. It's also used when a project manager needs to verify and control the project scope. The WBS is the primary source of information they'll use to ensure that only the work that needs to get done is getting done. This process is important when it comes to maintaining the scope and only changing it when absolutely necessary. If the scope is expanded and more work creeps into the project than what is already in the WBS, this is called scope creep and is something that needs to be avoided. The first input into the Create WBS process is the Scope Management Plan. The Scope Management Plan helps to create the WBS by examining the project scope statement to figure out what and how much work needs to get done. The project scope statement describes the general work that needs to get done and the kind of work that will be excluded from the project. For example, if the project is to build a bridge, renovating the park at the base of the bridge is not part of that project. That will be a part of a different project. Requirements documentation is needed so the project manager will understand what the stakeholders want and what needs to be done to produce the final deliverable. Industry-specific WBS templates and standards are enterprise environmental factors that must be considered when creating the work breakdown structure. Organizational process assets like policies, procedures, templates, and lessons learned from previous projects can be useful when breaking down the work into manageable components. The first tool and technique that a project manager can use when creating the WBS is called decomposition. Decomposition is a method used for dividing the project scope and project work into smaller, activity-based elements. It takes a task that needs to get done and subdivides it down into workable chunks called work packages. The expert judgment of experienced professionals who know about the kinds of work that will need to be done is always helpful when breaking down that work into manageable work packages. The scope baseline is the main output of the Create WBS process. The scope baseline becomes one of the major standards that the project management plan is measured against. Once the scope baseline has been set, it cannot be changed without going through the Perform Integrated Change Control process. Changing the scope just a little will drastically change the whole project, so the scope baseline needs to be controlled and maintained. The scope baseline consists of 3 elements: the project scope statement, which is a description of the major deliverable along with any assumptions made about it and any constraints it may be limited to, the WBS, and the WBS dictionary. The WBS dictionary is a collection of all the different terms for the work that needs to get done so that everyone on the project knows what everyone else is talking about. For example, The team members in sales and marketing may use different acronyms and have different nicknames for the processes that they use, and the team members over in research and development may have a whole different set of descriptions. If this is the case, a team member can simply reference the WBS dictionary and find out what the heck the other team member is talking about. The WBS dictionary collects all the different definitions and puts them into one repository so that the team members in research and development know what the sales and marketing team is doing, and vice versa. The last output is Project Document Updates. If any documents are altered or updated during this process, this needs to be documented so everyone is using the current assets. The WBS is a hierarchical decomposition of all the work, with the lowest level being the work packages. It's important to note that a project manager may be tempted to decompose the work down into the most minor of details, but this over-detailed level may add unnecessary complexity and cause this process to take longer than it should. In order to successfully complete the project work, a project manager should break the work down only into manageable components. Anything more may make the project planning unnecessarily difficult and make the project management plan hard to manage.